Hello everyone and welcome back to the Little Quilter. Today we are going to be working on such an exciting block. I'm so excited for it. This is month 6 of the Pas de Deux quilt. This is the last month of the Pas de Deux quilt. So we're going to be putting a lot of this quilt together, but we've got a couple more blocks to do. And this one is one that I'm so excited about. So it is called an economy block. And I know it's a pretty common block that is out there. And so I have got my pieces printed here. So we're just doing 4 blocks today that are this economy block. It is a paper piecing, which you guys know I like the paper piecing. I'd never done it until I started on this quilt, but I have really enjoyed paper piecing and have been looking at some other quilt designs to do more paper piecing after I finish this quilt, just because I don't want to get too many things going. But the recommendations for this block color was black and white based on Rachel Hauser's design. And unfortunately, I really don't have those colors in the laundry basket fabrics. So what I decided to do was go through and pick out some fabrics that I hadn't actually used. So there were a handful of fabrics that I haven't even cut into for one reason or another, maybe color or just design or layout. I just didn't think they would work well, but I kept holding on to them, waiting to use them, and I thought this is the moment because I'm gonna have to go completely off script and choose something totally different. And so I just started pulling out all of those colors and thought, wouldn't it be fun to be such a colorful block? The other thing was that I wanted the centerpiece of this block to be a lot more interesting, and so I thought a large print fabric would really work well for this rather than one of Edyta's really minute fabrics, because she makes beautiful fabrics, but some of them are very just flowy, and I don't know if that was really, or that just wasn't the look that I wanted for this economy block. I wanted something to be that focal centerpiece. And so I pulled out some of the larger blocks, and what I ended up with, which I'll probably have some of this going on in the background of me cutting this, but I ended up picking, these were the larger fabrics, and the birds in these fabrics drew me to them. And so I cut out a bunch of little birds, and as I was doing it, I realized that on the last block, I really didn't follow that same pattern. So I have had this fabric right here for all of this, and I loved it. As soon as I saw this fabric, I loved it so much, but I just have not been able to figure out a way to incorporate it into this quilt design without either just losing so much of it that you just don't even get to appreciate it, or just the color pattern and palette wasn't quite right for it. So I knew I wanted to use this, and what I ended up doing was rearranging some of these so that I ended up with all of my centerpieces are birds, and then all of the outsides are, the rest of the fabric from Edyta Sitar, but they sort of coordinate or pull some colors from that main focal point there. So I'm really excited about these. I laid them out and I was like, oh my gosh, I think this may be my favorite block. So without further ado, let's jump into sewing this and see if these do actually turn out as good as I hope they do. Here we go. Okay, so we've done our first lines on this one. We're going to take out those 2 pins, and then you can see here, you know you've done it right when you flip it over and it looks like this. That's what it's supposed to look like, right? Now, we do want to go ahead and get rid of the extra, and this is where having this really nice paper that's made for paper piecing, it's really nice to have because it just creases so easily and you're not fighting it. And so we're going to take and cut any excess that is past that 1/4 of an inch on both sides. And this is why when you're sewing this, you want to make sure that you stop on those corners. It's really tempting to go past the corners here, but you don't actually want to go past the corners, because if you do, then whenever you sew this and you want to fold it, you're going to be fighting that. I did that with the first one, thinking like, oh, I'll just over sew a smidge and it'll look good. Always make sure that you have your fabric folded over as well, because you don't want to cut your actual block itself. And I'm just using the ruler to line up what would be a 1/4 inch from that seam on the paper, and then cutting it. Now, the next step is really important with a block like this. We're going to get our ironing mat out, and we're going to go ahead and iron these open. And the reason is that if you were to keep sewing and sew across, you're not going to be able to open these, right? You're going to be dealing with a seam here, and that's not going to be right. So we want to go ahead and iron these out. Now, in a lot of my quilts, in a lot of my sewing, I will iron my seams open. In every Elizabeth Hartman quilt, she always irons her seams open for the most part. In this instance, you can't do that. You have to fold your seams over so that you can do the next part. All right, so we're going to swap out again. I feel like the one downside to paper piecing is I use a lot of tools with it. So I'm going to put my light board back up here so that I can see my line. So you can see here's one line and here's the other line. We're going to take our pieces and we're going to put them on here. Again, you want to do right sides together, so whenever you fold it over, you get that beautiful square. And I'm just going to roughly estimate here. And we're going to go ahead and flip this over. And you can see I'm like way over that 1/4 inch. This works well. That first fabric that I used, that center piece was so dark that it wasn't as easy as it is to see this. So that's kind of nice. And then we're going to put our pin in here. Some people will use glue. I personally like to use pins, but I do recommend trying to pin on the top of your fabric where you're sewing so you're not dealing with that bumpiness underneath, okay? Now, we can try doing it this way. I just always feel like I end up fighting the fabric, but let's see if we can line it up. That wasn't too bad actually. So again, looking for that 1/4 inch seam. Ooh, too much. There we go, roughly there. It doesn't have to be exact. You know, this is the nice part about this, is that when you do these blocks, there's usually a lot of overage. So I do feel like the one nice thing with paper piecing is your blocks come out really the right size, which is really nice. I mean, they're always perfect. Kind of makes you want to paper piece all the time if you're a perfectionist. Okay, so now we're ready to sew down this line on either end and do the same thing and fold those open, all right? Again, not wanting to go over this line, we want to stay on this exact line right here. Right, so there's that side done. I do like to do a little bit of back stitching on either end. It just makes me feel more comfortable that the blocks are going to be set. Now, obviously, we're going to go over this line, and so I think they're going to be safe either way, but it's just kind of nice. So, and then again here on this side, we're going to do the same thing, lining that up, and then stitching down. Okay, so I was really talking hard about staying within that line on that first block right here and not going over any. Now on this block right here, this last one, right, because this is the last one, we actually do want to go over each edge like a quarter of an inch. And that's because with this block, we're actually going to cut our seams, or we're going to cut this block out a quarter of an inch out so that we don't lose this point right here. And so just to make sure that everything is sewn together, we are going to go ahead and actually sew another quarter inch out on each end of all of these so that that's nicely sewn and we don't get anything sort of just like with a little bit of a flap, okay? I made a huge mistake. I was trying to finish this block quickly and I was going to flip it over and cut off my quarter inch seams, and I wasn't paying attention and I flipped over the side that already had one ironed down and I cut it off. I cut it straight off. For some reason I hadn't hit record, and so you guys missed the horrible noise where, and then I couldn't believe I'd done it. So I cut myself another block, thankfully had enough fabric to do that, and I'm hoping that this is going to work out. Let me show you how I kind of fixed it. Okay, so looking at the block, this is the side I cut off. You know it's the one I cut off because you see how this one has beautiful little triangles here, and this one ends pretty darn abruptly. I'm hoping that this is going to be okay and hidden because obviously now when I flip these over, we've got this seam thing going on here and it doesn't end beautifully like this. I hope this doesn't mess it up. Man, it's such a beautiful block too. Like, oh, it's just because I'm rushing and trying to get this done. We're heading out of town and I really wanted to get this block done. Well, and I've got 2 more blocks to go so that I could go ahead and work on the video of this. All right, let's see what happens. All right, here's the moment of truth. Let's flip this block over and see. Okay, I think it's gonna be all right. So pull it up here so you can see. There's this smidge here, but once we sew this to something, I think that's going to be totally covered. And then there's this little guy right here, which is even smaller. So, oh, we may have done it. Oh, it's so pretty too, isn't it? I love her fabric so much. And this is gorgeous. It almost makes me want to do an entire quilt like this with hers. Like, gosh, wouldn't that be so pretty? Okay, I feel like I say that with every one that we do. I'm sorry if I do. Here's like, not again. All right, we're going to clean up this mess. We're going to move on to these last 2 blocks. We got this. All right, everybody, here is the big reveal. So we've got this block here, and we've got this block right here. And then the other two blocks that we completed. So there's that one. And our very first block. So, not too bad. And I think they turned out a lot of fun. There's a lot of patterns going on, but I do feel like having the birds as the center really grounds it. Okay, everybody, it is done. I finished them and I love them so much. So I'll give you a close-up here. This is the one block. It's a smidge short here where, for whatever reason, whenever I was paper piecing it, I didn't line it up quite right. But this will get hidden by the seam whenever it is sewn against something, so nothing bad. I still have all the paper on, so the next portion of this is to actually line them up in a row, but I just wanted to get the blocks done today. So there is that one. And I finally got to use this beautiful fabric that I've been wanting to use. This was the first block that I did. And a lot of blues here, but that center part giving it a lot of contrast. I feel like these ended up looking really cool. I know there's a lot of colors and patterns, but having that center block there with that large pattern really just helps to focus, and then you're kind of able to then look out from that and see the other colors that are there. So overall, I am in love with this style, and I really need to do some more fabrics with this. I think this would just be a really fun quilt. I don't know if you could do all of it with this style. That might be a bit much for your eye, but maybe some like other things. I don't know. I'll have to look at designing something like this. You guys tell me, which one's your favorite block? I'm having a really hard time. I really like this fabric here, and I've just been using it, so I think this one's my favorite, but I'm just always partially drawn to green, so I really like this green, just how that pops. I like that. Okay. As always, I hope that you guys have enjoyed this. This is the Pas de Deux Month 6 Economy Block by Rachel Hauser. If you're interested in doing this quilt, I've got it linked down below. I am using Laundry Basket Fabrics quilt, and I am loving it. I am loving using all of her fabrics. They're just so pretty. If you guys have questions, leave them down below. Otherwise, I hope that you enjoyed this video. I know it was a little bit of a crazy one with all of the swapping everything out, but unfortunately, paper piecing does require a few tools. So again, we'll see you next time. Have a wonderful day. Thanks.